Welcome to Femme Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portela, and today we are going to hang out in Ballylaggin with our Tommen crew. But before we dive into today's episode, let me tell you how you can support and follow the podcast. You can, of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, literally on any streaming platform. If you can listen to a podcast there, we're on it. You can watch full video breakdowns on YouTube. You can get cultural analysis over on Substack. There will also be full video breakdowns on Substack. So if you want to watch and you're on different platforms, you don't use YouTube for whatever reason, you can go watch it on Substack. You can also watch the podcast over on Patreon, and launching with this episode is going to be a fan guide. This is free for this book. I might end up charging for these. The fan guide, pretty freaking cool. It has everything that you need as a visual companion to help you as you're going through the book, especially for a book like this where there's multiple books in the series and there's a lot of overlapping information. Here's what I will say. It has maps, it has character quick references, it has deep dive character profiles, there are relationship boards, there's family trees, everything that you need in order to be able to really immerse yourself in this world. So we're starting with this, but I'll be doing it for every series that we cover. The fan guide will always be over on the Patreon. For right now, it's free. So if you go over to the Patreon, you'll be able to get that fan guide. I'm not sure if it will be up the second that the podcast is up because I'm still tweaking and working on it, but it will be up at some point. You don't have to join and pay, although there is a paid tier to the Patreon. It's called Two Femme, Two Furious. You can get more details over there, all that good stuff. You can also, of course, follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok at Femme and Furious Pod. Okay, let's take a little chic peek at chapters 1 through 10, what we're covering today. We are deep diving into Binding 13, just about 10 chapters at a time. The last episode will have a little bit more than that. We'll just go through the end of the book, but we will be going just about 10 chapters per episode. This is book 1 of a series that currently has 6 books, though there are a few others that have been announced. There's been many more that have been teased by the author, Chloe Walsh. So we're just getting started on our Boys of Tommen journey. This is a series that is important to me. These characters genuinely are people that feel like friends. Like I feel like I could fly to Cork, Ireland and be like, hey, where are my friends that hang out in Ballylaggin, which is not a real place. But the way that she builds this world out is so real. It feels so real. The series is being adapted on Amazon Prime, and from what we know so far, season 1 will cover the first 2 books, which is Binding 13 and Keeping 13. Now, Binding 13 and Keeping 13 focus heavily on Johnny and Shannon, but truly there are no side characters in this story or in the series. And Binding 13, if you're going chapter by chapter with me as we go through the podcast, Binding 13 ends in the middle of a scene that is immediately continued into Keeping 13. So I wouldn't even say it's a cliffhanger, although technically I suppose it is, but it's like they're one book. Binding 13 and Keeping 13 are essentially one book that has like a divider in the middle. It's very much Titanic. This is the first VHS. This is the second VHS. It's all one story. So if you are somebody who is using your library to get these books and you haven't taken out Keeping 13 yet, I would at least put in the request. Although I will say that Binding 13 and Keeping 13 are on Kindle Unlimited. So if you use Kindle Unlimited, these books are available to you. We are also going right from this series into Euphoria. So I will figure out how we are going to continue with Keeping 13 because I feel like to stop at the end of Binding 13 and not continue on in this deep dive is going to feel odd and weird to pick it back up. So we will be continuing right into Keeping 13, though I'm not sure what day of the week that will be getting published. So normally we do series on Tuesdays, but I'm going to be covering Euphoria every Tuesday through the end of that series. So I'm thinking that these will be special edition episodes that will be available maybe on Wednesday, maybe on Monday. I'm not sure. I'll figure it out, but just know that we will be continuing the flow into Keeping 13. As a spoiler warning, we are just going through chapters 1 through 10, but there will be a section at the end of each episode designed for foreshadows and spoilers through not only just this book, but through the entirety of the series so far. So if you don't want to be spoiled at all, don't listen to it. I will tell you what book I am spoiling something from. So if I am going to spoil something from this book and you finished it, but you haven't read other books in the series, I'm not just going to spoil it for you. I will tell you like, hey, right now we're about to talk about blank. Okay? So that's that for our spoiler warning. Here's our vibe check. This set of chapters 1 through 10 is an exposition dump, but we don't care because we love our little Irish family. I will say there are also trigger warnings across the series, and I'll give you the trigger warnings at the beginning of each episode of everything that we're talking about. So in this set of chapters 1 through 10, we are really just talking about bullying. That's like our main trigger. Though if you are somebody who gets queasy or you do not like injuries or anything like that, we talk about it a little bit, but we will really be talking about the bullying in depth episode. So if you are not into that, probably skip the series, but also you can skip ahead while we talk about it. If you've ever been with me before for a deep dive for a Slay by Slay episode, you're probably familiar with the fact that we normally do Femme Frames, which is where we dive into key feminist themes, history, cultural context, and more. However, I'm not doing a full Femme Frame because I have a feeling this is going to be a long episode because there's a lot to dive into since we're meeting our characters. So what I have as we go through these chapters is what I'm going to call feminist footnotes. So things that we will discuss that are pertaining specifically to that feminist conversation without them being full on deep dives and Femme Frames. So I'm sorry if you were looking forward to a Femme Frame. Depending on what's going on in the chapters, moving forward, if there's not as much to unpack, I will certainly do a Femme Frame at the beginning of the episode. If they're as meaty as this one was, we'll probably just have the feminist footnotes. So you will always get the feminine framing, but we just might not have an actual Femme Frame as we move through some of these chapters because there's a lot to unpack, especially when it comes to this series as a whole. So we are going to be doing chapter clusters, emotional beats, and just bear with me because this episode might be long because of how much exposition we get. So we're starting with chapter 1. The chapter is titled High Hopes and it's in Shannon's POV. Here's our summary. Chapter 1, High Hopes, drops us straight into Ballylaggin, a small town in Cork, Ireland, where we meet Shannon Lynch, 15 years old and already carrying the emotional resume of somebody twice her age. She is transferring schools mid-year, not for fun, but for survival. After years of relentless bullying at BCS, Ballylaggin Community School, Shannon is finally making the leap to Tommen College, a well-funded rugby prep school. The move does not come easily. Her father resists it, digging in his heels, but Shannon is determined to escape the environment that has chipped away at her confidence piece by piece. As she braces herself for her first day at Tommen, we are invited into her inner world. We learn about the tension inside the Lynch household, the strain of financial troubles, the weight that her mother carries, and the instability that hums in the background of her childhood. Ballylaggin is a small town riddled with crime, according to Shannon. And Tommen is an elite school filled with people much wealthier than Shannon. Shannon stands right at the border of both worlds, hoping that this might actually be the new beginning she so desperately wants. Okay, who's who in this chapter? Because we get a lot of information in this chapter. And again, if you want a visual companion, it's going to be over on the Patreon. It has the family tree. It has everything that you need in there. So we have Shannon Lynch. She's 15. Here's what we know about Shannon just from this chapter. She throws up when she's anxious. She has not gotten her period, and the doctor suggests that this is stress stunting her growth. Women need a certain percentage of body fat in order to be able to get their periods. Okay? This is typically around 17 to 22% body fat. So for women or girls who have 17 or less percent body fat, it often leads to irregular periods or no period at all. So Shannon has not gotten her period. She tells us that she's underdeveloped. She uses that language. She says, I'm tiny, I'm underdeveloped. She also throws up whenever she's anxious, and she has multiple episodes of this. So she probably doesn't have a lot of body fat on her. And on top of it, they have financial trouble. So she's also probably not eating a ton, right? So I just want to throw that out there because this is something that we will be talking about and tracking as we go through the book and the series. Shannon has also been bullied since the age of 4. So quite a young age. This has been her entire life. She's never known anything else. She is now changing schools mid-year from BCS, Ballylaggin Community School, to Tommen College. She was held back in BCS in hopes that this would put an end to the bullying, but if anything, it enhanced it. She was still bullied, and this was still a problem. So she never really got a fresh start, even though she was held back technically. Shannon describes herself as emotionally ancient due to her trauma. She also tells us that she is not interested in boys or fads. She specifically says, quoting from the book, I had never been one to be fazed by boys or fads. It just wasn't in me. I once read somewhere that we mature with damage, not with age. If that's the case, I was an old age pensioner in the emotional stakes. So when we are looking at Shannon, something that I want us to consider, and with other characters too, but let's just put this for Shannon in particular, is like, what is the cost of growing up too fast, too soon? Okay, let's put a pin on that. We will certainly be talking about it. Here's what else we know about Shannon. She carries a deep shame. This is a shame about pretty much everything across the board. Family, her body, especially the way that she looks. She's like, I don't look like other girls. Other girls had growth spurts. They have curves. I don't have those things. She compares her boobs to like fried eggs. So she's like, I have no curves or anything like that. She's got a shame about her sexuality or lack thereof. She's aware that other girls have this drive in their sexuality and their hormones, that they're boy crazy, etc., and that's just like something she's not interested in. She has a shame about being bullied. She doesn't put the blame on the bullies. She in fact takes the blame. She says it's because I'm unlikable that I'm bullied. She has a lot of shame around class and money. And these are things that we need to pay attention to because Shannon and shame are a dynamic duo. They go together. And this is something that we need to track as a part of her character arc because there is so much shame. Literally, as she's giving us her POV, it is dripping in just how embarrassed she is about her life and her standing in life and herself, just how low her self-esteem is that we're getting to bear witness to in this first chapter, very first chapter. So Shannon tells us a little bit about her bullying experience, okay? If this is not for you and you don't want to discuss it, skip ahead. She is bullied in gendered and sexualized ways. That's very clear through what she tells us. So number 1, she is catcalled for sexual favors because men are unoriginal. Then she's called frigid, which is what we in America would call prude. So she's called frigid for refusing. And while this is also unoriginal, the frigid insult really reveals how girls are punished for sexual boundaries, especially after having been hypersexualized by the same people throwing the insults. So I don't know a single woman or femme person that I know that gender expressed feminine that has not been through some sort of experience like this where a guy will hit on you, right, or catcall you or whatever, and you're like, no thank you, I'm not interested, and then all of a sudden you are a cold bitch or like you're a prudish bitch or something like that. Bitch is another favorite insult from men. She is also called trans as an insult. They don't specifically say trans, but they say, worst of all, I've been told that I have like men parts under my skirt or something like that. So she's called trans. And again, trans used as an insult shows rigid gender enforcement by the people that are bullying her. Now, this makes no sense to me ever when anyone ever uses like trans as a form of insulting other people, especially women. Because if you're insinuating that a woman is trans, you are implying that she has man parts, despite the fact that that's not how she gender categorizes. Fine, whatever. So you're essentially insulting penises, or saying that the worst thing a woman could possess is a penis, which is really just insulting men, but they're really just misgendering themselves, I think. I don't know. Be original, fellas. You can do better than this. There's rumors now because she's an anxious because she throws up when she's anxious. There's also rumors that go around school about her having anorexia. She tells us that she's had pads stuck to her back, which is humiliating enough, but even more so considering the fact that she doesn't get her period. Not that her fellow students would know this, but again, using women-centered tactics to promote degradation for her. So these very gendered specific bullying attacks. Her ponytail is cut off publicly. She is photographed in gym class in her underwear, and that photograph is circulated through the school. Once again, humiliated for something that is sexualized or sort of salacious, even though she is not the originator of that. And then this escalates to what she says is physical assaults. So that's what we get from Shannon in this beginning chapter in High Hopes. Then we get a little bit about Marie Lynch, who's an interesting character. Marie is 38. She got pregnant with Darren when she was 15. She is currently pregnant again. She works at the hospital as a cleaner. She is the financial provider for the family, and she carries the economic and emotional burden of the entire family. Now, Marie gets pregnant at 15. So I don't know about you, but I grew up watching 16 and Pregnant, right? A show that completely traumatized me. Teen Mom, a show that completely traumatized all of us. So when girls become mothers before they have economic autonomy, before they have education or any sort of stability, their life trajectory entirely shifts. And just being honest, even when you have all of those things, getting pregnant shifts the trajectory of your life either way. So Marie's adolescence, because she's 15 when she gets pregnant, likely ended the day that it began. Her labor is both emotional and physical, and she is the family's emotional scaffolding, at least in theory. We will learn a lot more about Marie as we go through the series. She's 38. She's pregnant again. She's been pregnant and having children for over 20 years. Her oldest son, Darren, is 23 years old. She is still financially responsible. She is still cleaning hospital floors to keep the lights on. And Shannon grows up watching her mother's body absorb consequence after consequence, particularly when it comes to the fact that she has 3 younger siblings and additionally pregnant with a 4th. Now, patriarchy as a system, as a structure, often frames teenage pregnancy as individual irresponsibility, particularly on the fault of the woman, relying heavily on a lack of shared male accountability. So let that sink in. We all know it, right? If we get pregnant as women, we're sluts, we're whores, we've done something wrong. It's not at the same fault line as men. And of course, this is true for Marie because notice who carries the burden long term. Not Teddy, her father, or Marie's partner. So Marie's youth was rerouted, and Shannon has to internalize that rerouting as a cautionary tale and inherited pressure, essentially. And as a part of carrying this burden long term, that includes the financial responsibility. So Marie works, even though she's pregnant, even though she has many, many kids. Marie is working, Teddy is not working. The inversion is quite important here because patriarchy, again, as a structure, promises men authority in exchange for provision, particularly with women, right? This is a tale as old as time. Like, I will give you security if you give me X, Y, or Z. So men have been set up in this system to be people that provide some sort of financial stability or financial security. I'm not saying that's how it should be, especially as like a modern woman myself. I'm just saying that the story is taking place in 2005. So we need to be aware of like the time period too. Not only is it taking place in 2005, But we have to look at the patriarchy as an entire structure because it's something that is going to continue to come up across the series is how this structure, i.e., the patriarchy, really has deeply influenced each and every character and what that means. So with Marie and Teddy, there's an inversion of this, that Marie is the one who is providing the stability. Marie is the one who's providing the provision. Teddy claiming this authority in their household, like a really deep sense of fear and like anxiety around Teddy. He's claiming that authority without any provision. So it's a subversion of the expectation, and that's something that I really want to pay attention to. Marie is the one who earns the money. She is the one who manages the household. She's pregnant, and Teddy drinks, gambles, polices morality of the household, particularly resisting, Shannon's school transfer. So this is a textbook gendered imbalance where Marie has become the economic engine and the emotional shock absorber, while Teddy retains his control through intimidation and ideology rather than any sort of contribution. So that brings us to Teddy. We don't know his age, though, because him and Marie met in high school and got pregnant while they were in high school, we can presume that he's anywhere between 38 and 41 ish. Here's what we know about him: he is homophobic, he's an alcoholic, he's a gambling addict, he doesn't work, he is opposed to Shannon changing schools, and he blames Darren's sexuality on an incident in the past. So if you picked up on that language and you're like, well, what does that mean? Guess what? We're going to talk about it a little bit. We can infer that there is some sort of sexual assault that Darren has been subjected to, though we don't know what happened and we haven't gotten a story. This is just an inference, an assumption based off of the text. Teddy refuses to see queerness as innate. He needs a cause for why Darren is gay. Otherwise, his masculinity feels threatened. So, again, a structure of the patriarchy here. Then we have Darren Lynch. He's 23. He was born out of wedlock, so he is labeled a bastard child. He is gay. He's estranged from his family because he left home. And there is some sort of implied past trauma. Then we have Joey Lynch, who is 17. He is Shannon's closest sibling and protector, and he is very aware of her being bullied. And then we have Tig, who is 11, Ollie, who is 9, and Sean, who is 3, who are all Shannon's younger brothers growing up in this very unstable household. And again, who we will learn more about as the series goes on. So we're getting sort of like a very light family tree right now, but we will learn more about these characters as the series goes on. We get mention of Claire and Lizzie, who were her former classmates from BCS and now happen to go to Tommen. So they represent sort of like a bridge between Shannon's past and present, and we'll learn more about them as these chapters go on. Then we have Tommen College, which is the elite rugby prep school. It's got lavish facilities. It is funded by wealthy parents, and it is a huge symbol in the story of class divide and opportunity. Okay, chapter 2. Everything has changed. Shannon's POV. Despite her fears, Tommen does not greet Shannon with pitchfork. It greets her with a peaceful indifference. She steps onto campus braced for impact, waiting for the snickers and whispers that do not come. For the first time in years, she is not the spectacle. Then, she is reunited with Claire Biggs and Lizzie Young. Claire is tall and warm, the kind of girl who is walking sunshine. Lizzie is sharper around the edges, moody, unimpressed, and the type who looks like she's already bored of everyone's nonsense. Together, they are a reminder that Shannon once had friendships untouched by cruelty, and that she can have it again. A bridge between who she was and who she might be. And for a moment, Tommen feels survivable. After realizing that she's left her phone in the bathroom across campus, Shannon makes a split decision to run and grab it. Afraid of being more late than she already is, she cuts across the rugby pitch because it's faster, it's a little bit more logical, and she figures it's harmless. Until, of course, it's not, because a ball comes flying hard and fast and strikes her in the head. And in that split seconds before she loses consciousness, her mind does not think accident. It thinks target. Though Shannon reflects and tells us that this will be the day that everything changed. So here's some important details that we need to think about from this chapter. There is a quote from Shannon where she says, "If this had happened in my old school," meaning BCS, "a phone left unattended in the bathroom wouldn't have survived 15 seconds, let alone 15 minutes. You're walking shoulder to shoulder with the wealthy now, Shannon," I thought to myself. "They don't want your shitty phone." So just a real awareness of the class discrepancies here. And I want to keep paying attention to the class discrepancies because it's a huge part of who Shannon is. Okay, chapter 3, Flying Balls, Johnny's POV. Here's a summary. Enter Johnny Kavanagh, Tommen royalty. Johnny is a semi-professional rugby prodigy. He plays everywhere he possibly can. The U18s, the academy, the club, school. If there is a pitch, Johnny is on it. Recently injured and freshly, though not rightfully cleared, carrying the restless energy of someone who measures his worth in performance, Johnny steps onto the field with something to prove. Frustration is wafting off of him. He snaps at his teammates and he's picking petty arguments with them. That frustration spills over, causing Johnny to boot the ball where it rockets across the pitch and collides with Shannon's head. Johnny is across the field in seconds, immediately going into damage control mode. The temper that moments ago needed a release now pivots into protection. After finding she's a little fuzzy-headed, Johnny insists on walking her to the nurse. The irony is thick. The boy who struck the blow is the first to want to shield her from the pain of it, and just like that, their stories are tangled, not by fate or fireworks, but by violence and injury. Okay, here's a little who's who. Introducing Johnny Kavanagh. Okay, Johnny is actually introduced to us first through a newspaper article praising his talent. His public identity comes before his private interior thoughts that we will get. So before we even meet him as a person, we meet him as potential in this newspaper article. His achievement is his top form of currency in this world. And once again, the patriarchy often socializes boys to derive their worth from achievement, especially within sports culture. So Johnny is the captain, the star. He's a pro prospect. He is the future. He is the future of Ireland. He's going to play for their country. All of these things. His identity is not necessarily as Johnny the teenager, especially to people from the outside looking in. It is Johnny the asset. What can Johnny do on the pitch? What can Johnny do on the field? And when boys like Johnny are raised as performance projects, they internalize this equation that is performance equals value, underperformance equals failure, and failure equals identity collapse, which is where we meet Johnny in the beginning of this story and why the prospect of his worsening injury is so threatening to him and causing him so much frustration. He is the captain of the rugby team. He plays center, competes at 3 different levels. He competes at school, which to him is a fucking joke. He competes at the club level, which is like a local community team. And then he competes at the academy, which is an elite development pipeline to pro rugby. Johnny is recently back from injury. He's lied to his doctors and returned too soon. He had surgery in December. If you want a timeline of everything that's happened that we talk about in this stretch of chapters that will grow as we go through the chapters, again, it's in the fan guide. It's over on the Patreon. There's a timeline that goes with this, so you'll be able to see everything that they talk about. So he's returned too soon from his injury. He's spread thin, he's overworked, and he is deeply performance driven. So all of this is causing a problem for Johnny. He's self-aware enough to know that he's overreacting, but not regulated enough to stop it, which is important for his character arc as we go forward. He can admit that he's hangry, that he's exhausted, that he's frustrated, but he doesn't do anything to stop it. In fact, he lets those things continue to pile on to the point where he needs a physical release or outlet to his anger. So he knows that he has star privilege. He's also aware of this, and he pushes his boundaries with his coach because of it. He knows that basically nothing that he does is going to get him pulled out of the game, even when he's completely being a jerk, and he knows that too. So to me, star privilege has a lot to do with his inability to be able to emotionally regulate. How many times have we seen a story that centers an athlete who gets away with something because they have talent? so many times. This is like so many stories. This is a trope at this point. How many people have we seen in real life with this? How many times have we seen women who are sexually assaulted, for example, by athletes, only for the athletes to get a slap on the wrist because they are some sort of critical or key player for that team? This kind of insulation due to athletic excellence breeds entitlement. And Johnny is entitled. Sorry, he's our main male character. We are going to love him, but he is entitled. He's an entitled athlete. It also breeds isolation because number one, Johnny stands alone. He's far superior to the other people that he's playing with, at least at Tommen. So, which is mostly where we see him interacting. So we have to take that into consideration, that it also breeds some sort of isolation because he's far better than his peers. Even when he's on the team with them, he's not holding his team to his standard, not like even the coach's standard. But also, if your value as a player protects you from consequences of something, you never have to fully learn how to regulate your emotions, which is something that Johnny is clearly struggling with. He has a quick temper. The language that he uses is consistently pushing like near mania. He uses a lot of violent, very aggressive language in this chapter. He has violent, intrusive thoughts towards Ronan. He specifically says, quote from the chapter, "I knew what was wrong with me. I had spread myself too thin these past few months and had come back too soon from injury, all of which is causing him to play below a level which he holds himself accountable, and that is deeply frustrating to Johnny. He needs a physical release for his anger." He doesn't mention any of these things, though the subtext is there. He has a fear of re-injury, a fear that this injury is not going to heal and it's going to be career ending for him before he's ever even gotten started. He has anxiety about not being good enough. He is exhausted and he's vulnerable because of all of this. So we talk a lot about how the patriarchy impacts the ladies, the gaities, and the thadies on this show, but we don't usually talk about it from the men's perspective. And with this series, we have to, because from this book, through the entire Boys of Tommen series, we will see how the patriarchy is, as a system, lets down everybody. Like, it doesn't support actually anybody. And Johnny is a star pupil in that thesis. Because instead of admitting that he's scared or feeling unworthy or whatever else is going on in his head, he defaults to anger. And Johnny's anger is a topic that we will continue to revisit episode after episode because it's his default emotion anytime that he gets heightened in any way. We can start that conversation here by talking about how it's a fault of the system that he's in. Elite sports. Again, we've seen these stories again and again. Locker room talk, the overt masculinity, the physical and social pressure that comes from being on a sports team. None of this is new to us trope-wise, but especially in sports and especially in one that is as physical as rugby is, aggression is often translated into passion. And Johnny is passionate about the sport. So I don't want to diminish that for him because this isn't something that he does just to do or that he feels pressured to do. The person that puts pressure on Johnny is himself because he wants this. He wants to be a professional athlete. He knows that he's good enough to have it. But his aggression goes way beyond passion for rugby. It is something that is a much deeper part of who he is. Johnny's anger is something that is very present from the get-go. This is our first chapter in his POV. And we meet Johnny, of course, at a time in his life when he is more irritated and more frustrated because of his injury, and that frustration piles on because he's playing for Tommen and he wants to be playing for Dublin. He resents his parents for moving them to the countryside. He blows up at his friend Patrick Feely for throwing wide, even though they're at practice. This isn't a game. It's nothing all that serious, but he kind of like picks a fight with him over it. Then we get this statement from Johnny. "I was perturbed beyond all rationality when a girl strolled across the pitch. Fucking strolled right through the training grounds. Irritated, I glared at her, feeling a rage inside of me that bordered on manic." Perturbed, irritated, rage, manic, right? Like the language in that one sentence of his POV, that's just one sentence out of the whole chapter, is so heightened. This isn't even like I'm a little frustrated. Johnny's angry. He has a lot of anger. And it's something that we have to continue to talk about because his anger isn't directed at Shannon. In fact, the next sentence that he goes on to say is that his anger of her strolling across the pitch has nothing to do with her. Like, it has nothing to do with Shannon. It's all related to the fact that the team is so bad that he thinks other students don't even respect the fact that they're practicing, which, of course, we know from Shannon's POV is completely untrue. This is not even a thought that goes across her head. Even still, the reason why Johnny is angry is not as important as the fact that he is angry. There's another quote where he says, "Furious at the threat, but knowing I had been beaten, I let rip at the ball in my hands, drop kicking it with an unsated fury thrumming through my veins with no care for direction. The minute the ball whizzed off the foot of my boot, the anger inside me dissipated in a rush, ejecting itself from my body in defeat. Damn it, I was being difficult. I knew better." So, like a teapot, his anger boils and boils and boils. The second that the teapot starts whistling, you pull the kettle off, right? The second that his anger has an outlet, it starts whistling, he kicks the ball, he pulls him off the heat, right? So he needs some sort of physical release for his anger, which at one point could have been rugby, but because he's injured and the team isn't that great, it's not doing it for him right now. Who pays the price for his anger? Shannon. The second he kicks the ball, his anger dissipates, but Shannon is the one who pays the price with a concussion. This is symbolic whether it's intentional or not. It doesn't matter that Johnny didn't intend to hit her. Unchecked male frustration lands on women. Not always physically, though Shannon is somebody that we want to pay attention to and have our eyes on when it comes to how men's unchecked anger becomes a physical outlet that she is involved in. Johnny didn't mean to hit her, but she is the one who absorbs the impact anyway. How many times will that be the case over the course of this story? Okay, moving on from Johnny's anger. He immediately goes into panic mode when he realizes that she might be seriously hurt. Literally, the second that Shannon tells him not to touch her, he puts his hands up. So right away, all of his arrogance and his confidence fade. He is immediately unsure of how to handle Shannon, which I just love because it feels so true to like a coming of age story and falling in love for the first time. The total insecurities, self-doubt, this, machismo that he has on the field just completely dies out the second that he's with Shannon because he doesn't know what to do and he's completely out of his element. Shannon then tells Johnny that this was her fresh start and immediately says that her dad is going to kill her. And Johnny takes note of this. He's like, makes a note that she says that. She tries to stand up and is immediately put into like standard nightmare fuel, being in your naked in front of the entire school. And like, fine, it's not the entire school, but it's the entire rugby team. So a bunch of horny teenage boys. So still nightmare fuel for Shannon, who's been photographed in her underwear, and that photo has been circulated and she's been bullied for it. Like, this is literally something out of her waking nightmare. But Johnny defends her and blocks her from view, very Tom Holland style. If you've ever seen the video of like Zendaya needing to fix her dress and Tom Holland steps in front of her so that the cameras can't flash in case anything slips up. So Johnny does a little bit of that for her and then gives her his jersey so that she's completely covered up. He's so much taller than her that the jersey comes all the way down to like past her thighs. So that's great. And now Johnny is panicking because obviously she's got some sort of head injury. And this, in summary, is a potential major consequence, something that he doesn't really fear because he's like, no matter what I do, I'm going to end up on this field. It doesn't matter how I talk to them. It doesn't matter what fight I pick with my teammates. I'm going to end up playing on the field because I'm the best person here. That star privilege means nothing when the consequence to his frustration is going to lead him to his biggest fear anyway, which is if something is wrong with this girl that he doesn't know, he doesn't even know Shannon's name at this point. Something is wrong with her. I'm not going to be able to play rugby. Something's going to happen, or I'm going to get in trouble. Forget school. It doesn't care if he doesn't play at school. But if something ends up coming to fruition from this, he's going to be in trouble with the academy. And the academy is his pipeline to pro rugby. So he tries to keep a squeaky clean profile, something that we'll talk about in his next chapter. But this is a problem for him. And his anger finally now is catching up to him and has a consequence to his anger. We also meet Gerard Gibson, aka Gibsie. He is, according to Johnny, an exceptional rugby player who could be phenomenal, could be at maybe even Johnny's level, but doesn't take it seriously, likes to drink, likes to fuck, likes to party, likes to smoke. So not really at the same level, but Johnny sees excellence in him. And I want us to keep that in mind because Johnny has a clear read on people typically. He also plays flanker, which is the edge of the scrum. We are going to have an entire episode where we talk about all of the rugby positions, all of the numbers, all of the things. So I will call out people's positions as we go through, but there is a part of the book. This is a gentle spoiler, so if you want to skip ahead, go ahead. But there is a part of this book, if you haven't gotten there yet, where Johnny explains a bunch of things about rugby. So I'm going to wait until we get there to talk about rugby and deep dive into it. Other things that we know about Gibsie from this chapter. He's not as tightly wound as Johnny. He's like the comedic character. He is the sidekick kind of character to Johnny's seriousness. So he reads as much lighter. His character is much lighter. We also get mention of Patrick Feely, who wears the number 12. He's a teammate that Johnny plays with, one of Johnny's friends. Johnny snaps at him, but we'll learn more about Patrick through the series, especially in other books as well. So we also get mention of Ronan McGarry. He taunts Johnny and calls him Dublin scum. So I looked this up, like what is the deal with the Dublin scum thing? And there's a mostly friendly feud between Dublin, the capital of Ireland, and Cork, which the people of Cork call the real capital, though it's more widely known as the rebel city and is one that is trying to assert its independence from Dublin. So the feud stretches across facets, but especially within sports. And when I was doing some research, I had seen a lot of people compare it to like the feud between New York and Boston, where like Boston really cares about this feud and New York is just like, what the fuck ever, bro. So Dublin being New York, Cork being Boston. I don't know if that's a true comp because I've never been to Dublin or Cork, but I will, one day get on the ground and do some on the ground research, journalistic integrity style for you. Ronan McGarry, though, represents not only nepotism because he's on the team because his uncle is the coach, but he represents Cork pride and regional rivalry and doesn't like or seemingly respect Johnny at all. So the only other thing I want to mention from this chapter is Welcome to Promise Watch, where we see who makes and breaks promises to Shannon over the course of the series. Johnny makes his first promise to her that he did not hit her on purpose. And since this is a truthful statement, he truly did not mean to hit her on purpose. We on the Council of Promise Watch consider this a promise kept. Chapter 4, Face Planning, Johnny's POV. Here's the summary. Johnny brings Shannon to the office and learns she was brutally bullied at her old school, reframing the accident in a way that makes his stomach drop. He is told to keep her awake, so Captain Rugby Prodigy finds himself on concussion duty, trying to hold a conversation steady while she drifts. He doesn't even know her name, so he asks, and she replies, Shannon, like the river. And just like that, our captain is done for. Shannon gets woozy and ends up with her head in Johnny's lap, an intimate and chaotic inconvenience given his healing groin injury and teenage hormones. While stroking her hair, oh, Captain, my Captain, he spots a scar. She murmurs that it's from her dad, but immediately takes it back, and the vibe shifts instantly. They talk in fragments with sparks flickering even through the haze. He learns that she is single. He also learns that she's nearly 2 years younger, triggering a long-winded internal battle in Johnny's mind about her age. So here's some important details from this chapter. Some logistics about the Shannon River. It is 386 kilometers, or roughly 229 miles long. The legend says that the granddaughter of an ancient king, though the king is unnamed, Shannon, went to the river to see Fintan, a name that I'm probably mispronouncing, who is the salmon of knowledge. There, Shannon was swept out to sea. So, poor Shannon. Shannon has a quote in this chapter where she goes, Johnny, 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 this is bad. Shannon has twice now, in her concussed state, mentioned something about her dad. She even goes so far as to say, can you save me? And Johnny is like, do you need me to save you? And even though she is concussed, there is an immediate comfortability, confidence, and safety that Shannon has with Johnny. Now, Johnny also says in this stretch of the story, I wasn't a natural 10, but I had decent aim and the ability to kick from long range when necessary. So for my non-rugby people, don't worry. Again, we're going to have an episode where we dive all the way into this. This is a rugby term. So when he says I wasn't a natural 10, what he means is 10 as in the position, which is fly half, and uses kicks to gain territory. So they are a kicking position, or at least that's part of their job in rugby. So rugby is actually like pretty easy to follow, if only for the numbers, because each team has the same numbers, unlike American sports where you can pick your own number. So like every rugby team will have a fly half, and that fly half will always be 10. So when he says I wasn't a natural 10, he's not referring to a specific person. He's referring to the position, which the position is a fly half. Now 10 is also a character that we will meet and we will talk about at some point, probably at some point even today. I'm sorry, I don't know all the way in my notes. I have 21 pages of notes for these 10 chapters, so bear with me. We also have, Shannon acknowledging that Johnny has a weird accent. So Johnny tells Shannon that he grew up in Dublin and moved to Cork later on. And we get this little exchange where she calls him a Jackeen and he calls her a Colshi, which these are defined in the book by Chloe Walsh. So a Jackeen is a person from Dublin, or a term sometimes used by people from other counties in Ireland to refer to a person from Dublin. So that's a Jackeen. There's some history around the British with this, but I am not going to go too deep into it, but it's really fascinating stuff if you want to. This episode just turned out to be so long, 21 pages by the time I was done writing it, that I was like, I will not go into the Jackeen and Colshi stuff right now, but I will define it for you. A Colshi is a person from the countryside or a county that is outside of Dublin, usually used as a friendly insult. Now, I have a video from TikTok that I'll put in the show notes that goes into this, because I was curious whether or not this was considered derogatory and whether I should mention it on this podcast. And it seems like this is friendly between the groups. But I put in a video where a guy from Dublin was like, there has been a reclamation of these things. Do you think that this is derogatory? And, let me know in the comments. And a lot of the comments being like, this is quite a friendly thing. So I could be wrong about that. If you're from Ireland, because I have a fair amount of people from Ireland that listen to this show. So if you're from Ireland and you're want to weigh in on this Jackeen Colshi thing, you let me know. I would love to hear from you. You can send me an email at femmefuriouspod@gmail.com. So I also want to put in this quote because it made me roll my eyes, where Johnny says, she was pretty. Pretty was a pussy word used by women and the elderly, but that's what she was. Lesai. The language is very 2005. I'm going to talk a lot about language in other episodes, and a lot about the language that they particularly like to use and how it's very derogatory and sort of derogatory language against women. So pretty was a pussy word. What is a pussy word? Is a pussy word used by women and the elderly, as if those things mean that it's bad? Anyway, I don't know. Just points off Johnny. No, thank you. Shannon's mom then comes to pick her up, immediately starts accusing Johnny of, doing this on purpose, yada, yada. Shannon comes to Johnny's aid with her mom, saying that it was an accident. And her mom says, how many times have you spun me that line? Now she's referring to the bullying that happened at BCS, but how many times has Shannon spun a lie about a bruise, a scar, etc., twice that we've already gotten in this stretch of chapters? Once about the scar on her head, where did that come from? My dad. and then being like, no, of course not. So we don't get really any clarity on that, but just like something to consider. Now, I'm also curious as to why Principal Twommy, if that's even how we say his name, literally doesn't say anything about a parent putting her hands and shoving a minor student at school. Doesn't do anything to mediate or diffuse the tension, but okay, whatever. Now, we're back on Promise Watch. So I'm going to read you this stretch of chapter, okay? I am sorry, I told her, tone gruff now and thick. For what, she whispered, seeming to lean closer as she chewed on her bottom lip. Hurting you, I replied honestly. Christ, my voice didn't even sound like it belonged to me. It was strained, raw. I cleared my throat and added, it won't happen again. You promise. So here's our first promise. Do you promise that it won't happen again? Okay. So we need to keep an eye on this. We're keeping a promise watch on what promises get kept and what promises get broken. There she went with the promises again. Yeah, I said, tone thick now. I promise. God, she groaned, grimacing now. Everyone's going to be laughing at me. Those words, that small fucking sentence, brought to life some weird fucking emotion I hadn't experienced before. I'm so embarrassed, she continued to mumble, eyes cast downward. I'll be the talk of the school. Look at me. She didn't. Hey! I paused and tipped her chin up with my thumb and forefinger. Once I was satisfied I had her attention again, I carried on. No one is going to say a word about you. But they all saw me. No one is going to open their mouth about it. Realizing my tone was bordering on angry, I brought it down a notch and tried again. Not the team, coach, or anyone else. I won't let them. She blinked her confusion. You won't let them? That's right, I confirmed with a nod. I won't let them. You promise? She whispered, a tiny smile pulling at her swollen lips. Yeah, I replied gruffly, feeling like I would promise all the fucking promises in the world just to make this girl feel better. I've got your back. Okay, so he makes two promises here to her. He promises he's not going to hurt her again. The council is out on whether or not he will be able to keep that promise because we don't know. We haven't gotten to the end of this book yet. He then makes her a second promise that no one is going to tease her about what happened. And again, the council is out because we don't know whether or not he can keep that promise. But promise watch. Okay, chapter 5, laying down laws and breaking them, a Johnny POV. Johnny barely has time to process what happened before the warning lands. Stay away from Shannon or face immediate suspension. For a boy whose entire identity hinges on rugby, that threat lands. But Johnny does not do distance very well. Still in full damage control mode and vibrating with protective energy, he orders his teammates to steer clear of her too, attempting to honor his promise that her transition to Tommen will go well. We also learn something deliciously destabilizing. Johnny has a type, and it is not 15-year-old girls with gentle demeanors. He prefers older women, where the drama is low and the expectations are lower. Shannon throws that blueprint straight out the window. His interest in her unsettles him because it is not only a visceral response that he has to her, but it is entirely drama-filled. And beneath all of that is another secret. He has lied to his doctors to get cleared to play post-injury. He came back too soon. Rugby is his oxygen, and the threat of missing the U20s this summer has Johnny on edge. Trying to make amends, he slips money into Shannon's locker to replace her ruined skirt and stockings, also as promised. Enter Gibsie, our lovable chaos goblin with a loyalty badge. He sweet-talks the office attendant D and gets his hands on Shannon's school file, knowing Johnny well enough to obtain it. What Johnny finds is pretty severe. It is pages of documented bullying, escalating incidents, and total systemic failure. Johnny reads it and something locks into place. Not just attraction for Shannon and not guilt for hitting her in the head, but a vow. He decides without being asked that Shannon Lynch will not be bullied at Tommen. Okay, we are only just starting to learn about Gibsie, but he is easily one of my favorite characters that we will spend time with over the course of the series. So we will spend a lot of time chatting about him because I love him a lot. Gibsie displays a lot of emotional intelligence, and while they're both very dramatically different, Johnny and Gibsie value a lot of the same things, including loyalty. They possess a lot of the same qualities, including emotional intelligence, though I think that Gibsie is way further ahead on the curve than Johnny. Right away, when Johnny is debriefing Gibsie says that she must have been mortified, talking about Shannon in her underwear on her first day, displaying an incredible amount of empathy without ever having met Shannon, and he is able to place himself in her shoes. Gibbs also clocks right away that Johnny is crushing on Shannon. So here's their dynamic bromance. Johnny and Gibsie orbit the same values: loyalty, protection, and emotional intelligence. But where Johnny is all combustion, Gibbs is all calibration. Johnny reacts, Gibbs reads the room. The two have each other's back, but Johnny is moved into action much faster than Gibbs. So I want us to also put a pin on Gibsie and any time that he jumps into action, because this is not his default. His default is to stand back and sort of watch as things unfold and not really get involved unless he's really moved to action. Okay? Johnny, on the other hand, could be moved to action if the wind blows a certain way. The power balance between them is surprisingly equal. Gibsie isn't intimidated by Johnny's intensity. He teases him for it. He calls him out for it. He knows that he's spiraling over Shannon before Johnny can even admit it to himself. So they make a really good pairing because they equalize something within each other. And where Gibsie, as we'll come to learn, is sort of like socially inappropriate sometimes, misses some social cues, Johnny reins him back in. So they are really good like weight and counterweight to each other depending on what is happening in the story. The emotional currency between them is an unspoken understanding. Gibsie sees the cracks in Johnny's armor but doesn't weaponize them, though he does push on those cracks in the armor to get Johnny to deal with his repressed emotions for Johnny's own good. He does it for his own good. There's a lot of trust between Johnny and Gibsie. That's important to Johnny because it lets Johnny be flawed without immediately having to defend himself or defend his position or defend his talent. Some tension points that we will see and that we should pay attention to. Johnny's savior complex versus Gibsie's boundary issues. So the tension is there, but they love each other nonetheless. Here's a feminist footnote about their little bromance. This is what male friendship could look like when it is not solely built on dominance. Gibsie disrupts hypermasculinity simply by being emotionally intelligent and obscure. He proves that loyalty does not require control. If Johnny ever evolves, it will be because friends like Gibsie normalize that kind of vulnerability for Johnny. Now, we also get mention of Bella and a little debrief about the relationship with Bella. So here's their core dynamic between Johnny and Bella. It's very transactional. It's physical. Bella wants proximity to his status. Johnny wants release without any complications. The power balance is uneven but fluid in who's got the power and who doesn't have the power. Bella is socially sharp and sometimes manipulative. Johnny is emotionally detached. Neither one is deeply invested in this relationship, which keeps it from exploding until Johnny can't have sex and throws the entire dynamic off. The emotional currency is sex as stress management. Johnny openly admits that he is jaded, that he probably realizes that the way that he thinks about sex isn't healthy, but Bella agrees to the no strings format and still plays subtle games, mind games, with Johnny through text and pressure. Johnny feels too lazy to leave, so when Johnny can't have sex, Bella then cuts it off. Here's a feminist read. Bella is often framed as mean or opportunistic, but she's operating at the same patriarchal script that most men do, where status is currency and the proximity to power is leverage. So Johnny compartmentalizes her because it keeps him in control. Like Bella is a stand-in for desire as convenience without any vulnerability. But this doesn't excuse her bad behavior because she does use Johnny. Like there is something about her that she's using Johnny for his status. She has no interest in him. Johnny says like he's offered to take her on dates. He's offered to take her to the movies. She's not interested in it because it's not public enough. So she wants to be with him when they're at school or when they're at a bar because it's much more public. versus like she doesn't want the emotional intimacy of going on a date with him. She's not interested in him. She's interested in showing him off. And we will have lots of stuff around Bella's behavior through this book and next book, but just as an acknowledgement that women who want status and power are often played as villains. So this, again, isn't excusing her behavior. We will continue to talk about her behavior. But why do we look at women like that? So let's look at the text messages that she sends to Johnny. Back text messages. She says, I'm getting sick of this shit, Johnny. I don't like being ignored, which is very Fatal Attraction. Okay. Everyone's talking about you, you know, saying your performance on the pitch is going to crap. It made the papers. They're saying you're losing your touch. I agree. You are being a useless dick and you have a useless dick. I know there's nothing wrong with you. You're just trying to get out of taking me to the awards gala at the end of the month. Why don't you ever take me to those things? I never ask you for anything. If you don't start appreciating me, I know plenty of lads who will. So, I mean, mean. These are like mean text messages. Your performance is going to crap. It made the papers. Johnny's trauma is something that we don't talk about a lot because it's much more repressed than like the other people's trauma who we will talk about as we move through the series. But Johnny has a real trauma that he's not good enough, that he's not going to make it. He's got some self-doubt. Like this is his biggest fear, is that this is his career dreams and they're not going to be able to come to fruition. And on top of that, because he is good and he is the closest thing to it in this little town of Cork, right? Not so little, but this town of Cork, there's a real fear that he has of not being seen as Johnny, but being seen as like Johnny, again, the asset. He wants to be seen as Johnny the person. And like Gibsie can offer him that. That's why their friendship really works quite well. But not a lot of people do. So he's got this fear. So not only is she touching on like all of his fears, it made the papers that your performance is going to crap when he's already stressing out about this injury. You're being a useless dick and you have a useless dick. So emasculating him, touching on his fears that like this is all he can do and he's never going to be able to do anything else. And then weaponizing their connection to promote her own status, right? There's nothing wrong with you. You just don't want to take me to the awards gala. Why don't you want to take me to any of those? When Johnny's like, I've offered to take you on dates and you don't want to go on dates. Like you only want to go to the awards gala because it's this big event. So that's, you know, quite important to think about the relationship that he has with Bella. Johnny's dating life spanning past Bella, okay? He lost his virginity at 13 to a girl who is 16. He likes older women because it's drama-free with low expectations. He's loyal and exclusive. Like he says, I have no problem offering exclusivity. I don't need to sleep around, you know, but I'm not a boyfriend. I don't want to be somebody's boyfriend. It's not because I'm not interested in it. I'm just committed to rugby. That's my top priority. So pretty big deal. Johnny lost his virginity at 13. Pretty severe, pretty young, to be honest. And to a girl who is 16. Like 16 and 13 is a really big difference. I just want us to be honest about that. 16 and 18 isn't really that big of a difference. You're, you know, in the same wavelength at least, but like 13 and 16 are like two different schools, middle and high school. So now I don't know, because it doesn't work that way in Ireland, so I could be wrong about that. They could be in the same school, but like 13 is really young compared to a 16-year-old. It's pretty severe. We get some information, a little mini download about Pierce. He has two sisters. He's the hooker on the team. Again, we will have a conversation about rugby. But Pierce is important. We learn about Pierce that he's dating Lizzie. So talk about that a little bit more too. I also want to talk about locker room talk, like this Ronan McGarry, you know, if I want her, I'll have her talk. Your one Shannon won't be saying that, or should I say, won't be able to when my cock is buried down her throat. A true ecosystem of the patriarchy. It makes it nearly impossible for Johnny to be outside of this culture. Even when there are people like him or Gibsie or Huey or Patrick Feely or whatever who come to the defense of girls, this is just the primary culture that he's in. He plays on 3 rugby teams and he's an elite player. So he's in the middle of this all the time. And on top of it, he plays with the U18s and is aiming to play with the U20s, like plays with men who are much older than him. And part of that culture too. So Johnny gets quite violent with this, starts choking him out. And we have to talk about Shannon as a trigger for Johnny's anger, because she is. She is a trigger for Johnny's anger. And I want to be honest about that from the get-go, from this very first episode, because what happens when he is out of people to blame? What happens when there is not a villain? What happens when there is no one that stands between him and defending her honor? This is a pattern of abuse. Like I said, Johnny is a character that we are supposed to love and be endeared to, but I don't want to ignore the patterns of abuse that are in here, because this is how patterns of abuse start, which is like, it's not directed at that person, but they have anger only for there to be no one else to blame. And then that's what they turn to. They turn to you as the whipping post. So I just want to be honest about it. It's, if you're looking for spoilers, this is not one. So I will give you a spoiler by saying Johnny never has a physically abusive relationship with Shannon that we've seen across any of the books in any of the series. So that's not something that I think, I'm like saying this to keep your eyes open for abuse that Johnny is going to inflict on her. Just because we haven't seen it yet doesn't mean that's something that it won't grow into off page somewhere else down the line as our friends continue on their journey. I don't really think that's what's coming for Johnny's story, but I want to be honest about patterns of abuse, because abuse is a huge part of the story in the text that we're talking about. We learn in this chapter that Johnny is up for a professional contract. So rugby isn't just a hobby for him. It's going to be his career. It's very clear that Johnny's trauma is correlated to pressure and perfectionism. He says he needs to be as close to perfect in every aspect of my life, which means optimal physical and mental health, staying out of trouble, no irresponsible sex, STDs, babies, or otherwise, maintaining good grades at school. He's a good student with mostly A's. He's in honor classes, and he's got a plan. He plans to get a degree in business, play rugby into his 30s, and then when he retires, he will get his master's and continue his education. Johnny also has an obsessive and addictive personality, something that I want us to put a little pin in. We learn about his relationship with his parents. His mom isn't thrilled with rugby and wants him to have a life outside of rugby. She's not really particularly fond of his dedication to the sport. His father, on the other hand, according to Johnny, goes much easier on him, and is a little bit more supportive. Johnny trusts his gut. This is also something that we learn about Johnny in this stretch of chapter. He trusts his gut. He's somebody who gets a gut reaction to something and responds to it. So oftentimes his gut is correct. However, there's many times when his gut reaction demands a physical response, and that's going to be something that causes Johnny a lot of problems. It's what's happening here. He has a gut feeling about Shannon, and so he needs to go and get her physical file. He needs to go and do this thing to see what's happened, to validate to himself that what he's feeling is correct. So we meet Dee, who is an attendant, one of the attendants at the school. She calls Shannon troubled, and then Johnny has this incredible line, troubled, that's what Dee called her. But weren't all teenagers a little fucked up and troubled sometimes? That line, aren't all teenagers a little fucked up and troubled sometimes? That's the thesis of this entire series. We will come back to that line again and again and again. Now, Gibbs is hooking up with Dee, the office attendant, and insinuates in a conversation that Johnny is also hooked up with her too. Now, Johnny is completely crossing a boundary by reading Shannon's file. This is not normal behavior. This is his obsession and his addictive personality and his gut reaction feeding into this obsessive addictive personality literally just hours after meeting her. And after hours after meeting her, his obsession about her has led him to get into an altercation, a physical altercation with a teammate, try and coerce the school attendant for Shannon's file, suggest that he go to the hospital to see her despite having been warned that any interaction with her will have him immediately suspended, skips class because he can't stop thinking about her, then gets her file and completely invades her privacy by reading confidential information. In that confidential file, we learn that there's 28 pages of notes, 14 pages front and back, of incidents that she had at BCS. This includes having her hair cut off, which we knew about, An incident in PE that results in a bloody nose. Multiple reportings of vomiting in the bathroom. An incident with a glue gun. Graffiti on the walls. Assault to the point of police intervention. She has declining grades due to bullying. She refuses to take part in the overnight school bonding retreat. Referral to an educational psychologist, and multiple reports of Joey, who is Shannon's brother, getting involved or suspended on Shannon's behalf. And then isolation reported by her teachers. So Johnny validates this behavior by saying that his gut reaction was right. So just because his gut was right doesn't mean that you should have your best friend get a blowjob from the office attendant in order to acquire the school files. Now, he didn't ask Gibsie to do that, but he was kind of teetering on that line himself to get the file. But he says, like, this validates his behavior because he was right. I knew something was right, which doesn't give him the right to overstep a line that you knew was wrong to cross. And his response to this is, now that I know that I'm right and that there really is a problem, I can do something about it. Johnny is a fixer. And no one, least of all Shannon, has asked him to fix this. Shannon becomes both the muse and a mission within hours of him meeting her. And he crosses boundaries essentially for her own good, right? How many times has a man crossed a boundary for a woman's own good, convincing himself that protection equals permission? Okay, chapter 6, Awaken Hormones. Shannon's POV. After returning to school with a moderate concussion, Shannon braces herself for humiliation that never arrives. Time passes and she slowly settles into her life at Tommen, building real friendships with Lizzie and Claire. For the first time ever, school feels less like a battlefield and more like an escape from reality, especially an escape from the tension waiting for her at home with her father. As Shannon finds her footing, everything begins to shift. Her grades improve, her social life expands, and stability, it turns out, looks very good on her. We also get a reputation report on Johnny, at least the version of him that exists in the school folklore. Meanwhile, Gibsie openly flirts with Claire and invites him to the rugby match in Donegal, which sends the girls all spiraling into crush territory. Shannon wonders if her mom will even sign the permission slip for the overnight trip. The chapter ends with girls bonding over rugby boys and their budding feelings for them. So all of that shame that we mentioned earlier with Shannon, we get a direct quote here. Shame was a problematic feeling for me and sometimes made it hard for me to function. So again, we're just going to have to follow like how she processes and deals with her shame as she moves through the story. Now, Shannon's not into rugby because her family is with the GAA, the Gaelic Athletic Association, Ireland's largest volunteer sporting and cultural organization established in 1884 to govern, promote, and preserve traditional Irish sports, primarily hurling and Gaelic football. Now, I want to go all the way back to the first chapter where Shannon has said that she is not fazed with boys, she is not fazed with fads, okay? After sharing with us she's uninterested in boys, just a month later, one whole month later after meeting Johnny, she says, he was beautiful. Every single time I spotted him in the hallways, it was as if every delayed urge, feeling, and hormone that had been lying dormant inside my body for the last 15 years had erupted to life. Hello? Now, I think Chloe Walsh does an incredible job of encapsulating the teenage experience and that confusing flood of hormones and adrenaline that you get when you're around a person that you're attracted to, and how those feelings can become all-consuming, which is what happens for these two people. Shannon seeks Johnny out at school to look at him and considers this behavior creepy and stalkerish. Meanwhile, Johnny has stolen her file. Lizzie and Pierce, one of the rugby boys, he's the hooker, are in an on-again, off-again relationship. And in the stretch of chapter, Claire invites Shannon over, but Shannon declines because of her dad. She says that Claire knows, but she doesn't even know what she knows. She's never been told, but she appreciates that Claire never pushes her to talk about it. We also get Claire and Gibbs, the early years. We learn that they're neighbors. They live across the street from each other. Gibsie's mom owns a bakery in town. So we get a little bit more about Gibsie here. And he says to Claire I didn't know you were friends with Shannon. That would have been useful information because Gibbs is always looking out for Johnny and he knows that Johnny has a crush. Claire has a crush on Gibbs, but she claims that Gibbs only flirts with her because she's Huey's younger sister. And one of my favorite parts of this chapter is just the bonding of girlhood, talking about fictional and celebrity crushes. She's talking about Johnny Depp. She's talking about Captain Jack Sparrow. She's in love with him in this movie. And then they're talking about their real crushes. They're talking about Johnny and Gibbs and Pierce and this, closeness that you feel with your friends when you have that person that you can connect with and be in that girlhood experience with. So finally, Shannon is having some normal girlhood experiences. Chapter 7, Midnight Blue, Johnny's POV. Johnny's fixation on Shannon escalates under the guise of protection, of course. He inserts himself into her transition at Tommen, determined to ensure her comfort, even though she is already well-liked by both students and teachers. Meanwhile, his relationship with Bella collapses. Still recovering from his injury, Johnny can't meet the physical expectations that define their dynamic, aka lots of fucking sex, and without that foundation, there's nothing left holding them together. Johnny also continues to push himself recklessly in training, ignoring medical limits in an attempt to reclaim his control over his body and career. But his body betrays him in other ways too. His intense reaction to seeing Shannon causes him physical pain due to his injury since he gets a raging hard-on just at the sight of her, reinforcing just how deeply she has gotten under his skin. Gibsie, as always, sees right through it and calls Johnny out for what it really is, a crush. Now, Johnny has a really intense age gap anxiety. Johnny also has a lot of unprocessed feelings and internalized repression in order to achieve perfection. That's what's really pissing him off. But it's so severe that every little thing becomes extreme, like his feelings for Shannon. The fact that he has feelings for her is pissing him off. We were into February and I was still silently obsessing over Shannon like the river. I didn't like it, and I liked her even less for being the sole cause of my uncertainty. Now, the injury happens on January 10th. So from January to we're into February, it's been at least a month or so, and he's still silently obsessing over her. For a 17-year-old kid, that's pretty intense. He is checking her out though, much to his dismay, and despite the fact that she is not anything like his type. He likes curvy women, he likes big tits, he likes a lot of ass. He is like, she probably doesn't even wear a bra. And then he's bothered by the fact that he's thinking about her wearing a bra. He's like, you're a fucking creep. Don't think about that. She's 15. She's just a kid. So he's got this weird age gap thing and feels weird for having sexual attraction to her. Bella breaks up with Johnny in this stretch of chapters, and he is absolutely empty about it. He feels nothing over it. He just feels like she's used him, and now he's all used up. And this reminded me so much of Dirty Dancing, when Baby is like, so you used them? And he's like, no, baby, they used me. I think that there is a comp to Johnny the dancer versus Johnny the rugby player. So Bella has moved on to Johnny's teammate, Cormac Ryan, who is also at the academy with Johnny and got the call up during summer. But unlike Johnny, who was on an international tour this summer, Cormac has had trouble placing a contract, and Johnny doubts that he'll place one at all. So he's good enough to be in the academy, not the same level as Johnny, though, where he's definitely going to go pro if things continue in this direction. Johnny feels betrayed by them both, especially Cormac, since they've played together for the last 5 years. He also says that Bella's playing mind games, and for Johnny, who is an overthinker, is not moved by this. Johnny's impulses are driven by the fact that he cyclically thought about something. So I can't stop thinking about Shannon, so I'm going to go get her file. I can't stop obsessing over the fact that she's been bullied, so I'm going to have a conversation with my teammates to prevent them from bullying her, etc., etc. But most importantly, and most critically perhaps, is that Johnny values loyalty and honesty. So someone like Bella is never going to work for him because she doesn't value the same things as him. She values status. That's not a problem. They're just not aligned as far as being in a sexual or romantic relationship is. Johnny says rugby was my life. It's all I had. It's a lot of pressure for a 17-year-old kid. It's forcing him to push his body way past its limits with his injury, causing him to lie, ironically, which he values honesty, but lie to his doctors to continue to play. Gibsie tells Johnny that he has a feeling that he's going to marry Claire one day, and this like takes Johnny aback. He does not realize how serious that Gibbsie's feelings for Claire truly are. Johnny also feels very self-conscious about his body post-surgery, and I love it because he's like, I normally wouldn't care about being naked, but like now I care, and this is like unsightly, and it's just a normal teenage experience to feel a lot of shame or uncomfortability around your body. And for somebody like Johnny, who's pushed his body to physical limits, where he's very toned, very, rigid in like his working out. He plays on 3 different rugby teams. He plays semi-professionally at this point. He's got a good body. And just the fact that he like post-surgery, he's like, I just don't even know what to feel about my body, is such a normal teenage experience. And so it doesn't matter how you go through it. It is a rite of passage to feel uncomfortable and not know what to feel about your body. And I love that he has that experience. Okay. Gibsie, the intuitive, emotionally intelligent babe that he is, can not only tell that something is up with Johnny, but then questions him. He's like, is it about Bella? And Johnny's like, no, that's done with. And when Bella calls Johnny, Gibsie is like, well, is Bella aware of that? Does she know that it's over? And Johnny comes back and he's like, well, she should, because she's the one who ended it. But I just love that he is emotionally intelligent enough to know that like something's going on with Johnny. It seems like it's girl related, though he doesn't necessarily know what it is. And then is like, comes kind of to Bella's honor, is like, well, does Bella know that it's over? Is this like a thing that you just decided? I also love this about Gibsie, and this is something that you should just pay attention to as we go through the series. Gibsie considers Johnny and himself a pair. So he says to Johnny, I was half afraid you'd end up getting her pregnant and we'd be stuck with her for life. He considers them a pair, forever pair. I'm afraid that you're going to get her pregnant and we're going to be stuck with her for forever. I just love the way that he talks about him, and the fact that Johnny has this unwavering support and that they have this relationship that is known by the language that Gibsie says, like, you and me, we're in this for life. It might not be romantic, but like, guess what? I'm going in the direction you're going and I've got your back and we are in this together. This life journey, we're partners. So I just love that he says we, and this is not the first time. We'll pay attention to this as we go forward, but I just love like, I'm afraid you were going to get her pregnant and we're going to be stuck with her. Then he completely calls Johnny out for having feelings for Shannon, telling him to stop overanalyzing, and then calls her Sharon as a test to see how Johnny would respond. And then when Johnny is like, her name isn't Sharon, he's like, you've passed the test. So, just somebody who, again, takes those cracks in Johnny's armor and presses on them to help Johnny stop repressing his feelings and start, acknowledging his feelings towards things. Chapter 8, Explosive Diarrhea, Shannon's POV. After completing her Cinderella list of chores and with her father away for the weekend, Shannon heads to Claire's to go hang out. Lizzie confesses to losing her virginity to Pierce in the back of his car. Gibsie busts in from across the street declaring that his cat, Brian, is having explosive diarrhea in Claire's bathtub. Shannon uses her gentle demeanor to calm the cat down and get him safely back to Gibsie's house. If in this chapter you picked up on some tension between Lizzie and Gibbs, that would be correct. We'll just put a little pin in that. Just want to validate anyone who was feeling it. Now, I attempted to do Gibsie's chart, his astrology chart, but the sun changes from Aquarius to Pisces that day. So if he was born in the morning, he would be a Pisces. If he's born after around 12, I think it was like 11:30 or so that it changed, he would be an Aquarius. So without a time, we don't really know what it is. I believe that he's an Aquarius because he's quite eclectic. He's a little weird, but he would still have a Pisces moon. So he'd still have a lot of that Piscean energy, that emotional intelligence, that emotionality coming through and supporting him because his moon would be in Pisces either way. Chapter 9, Birthday Bashes and Broken Glasses, Johnny's POV. Johnny, Gibsie, and the rugby squad hit biddies for Gibsie's 17th birthday, only for Johnny's patience to be tested by Bella, who won't take no for an answer. Pushed past his limits and alcohol-infused, Johnny snaps, breaking a few glasses in a desperate attempt to escape from her kisses. As he waits for his cab, his thoughts drift inevitably to Shannon. Later, back at his house for a nightcap, Johnny drunkenly calls her my Shannon while chatting with Hughie, who commends him for watching out for her. So I love the double standard that happens in this chapter. We have a quote from Johnny where he says, Jesus Christ, if I kept touching her after she told me to stop, there would be war. So then he says, let's talk about double fucking standards, right? Double standards. These double standards do exist, that Johnny's not interested. He keeps saying no. And he keeps getting up to like move away from her. And yet she keeps positioning herself on top of him. Not only is it physically uncomfortable because he has a groin injury, but she keeps pushing it even further. It's not just her sitting on top of him. It's then she, tries to kiss him and he's not interested and he keeps saying no. He's trying to push off her. So I like that. Then they get into the cab. Gibsie, Patrick Feely, Hughie, and Johnny get into the cab, and Gibsie drunkenly says, your future wife saved me from a bad fucking pussy today. Buy a ring, lad. Pussy whisperers a keeper. So he is referring to Shannon and the fact that Shannon obviously helped him with Brian, but he's so drunk and no one knows what he means, so no one even questions it. They're just like, okay, lad, like, shut up, just get home, okay? Hughie then tells Johnny during their nightcap that Bella has been sleeping with Cormac since St. Stephen's Day, which is only 10 days post-surgery, and the same night that Johnny goes back into the hospital for masturbating. So there's a little timeline information for you. Last chapter, chapter 10, Boys Gonna Shine. It is Shannon's POV. During the schoolboy shield game, Shannon gets to witness Johnny's rugby brilliance firsthand. Johnny secures the win, and Shannon is somewhat bewildered by his composure with local journalists, not realizing how renowned he actually is in the rugby world. Johnny seeks Shannon out after the game, and the two have a very awkward and very teenage conversation, their first real one since Shannon's first day of school. Frustrated that their conversation is being interrupted by photographers, Johnny poses with Shannon for the paper. Flustered, Shannon tells Johnny she doesn't understand what all the fuss is about, breaking down his walls and reaching him past a place where he fears he is being used. Johnny invites her to a party, but Shannon declines, fearing her father's response. So in this stretch of chapter, we get our very first hi Johnny, hi Shannon. Earlier in this stretch of story, Shannon says that invisibility is safety for her. So for Shannon to be in the mix of all of this, having this big fuss of Johnny's celebrity around her is very overwhelming. We also learn here that Shannon's trauma response is flight, and her running away here is just one example of a flight plan that we always see throughout the book. She does it twice. She does it when she gets overwhelmed with Gibsie and Claire having their conversation, all the students around them, and then when she declines the party offer, she books it out of there before Johnny can like even question her on anything. We also get another information dump on her dad, so we're getting a little bit more about him, peeking a little bit more behind the curtain. She says, I wasn't even sure if I loved him anymore or if I ever had. Not when he terrified me worse than any of the bullies at school. So now we know that years of torments, 28 pages of incidents, whatever her father does that causes a swell of panic so severe for Shannon that she considers him worse than those experiences has to be pretty bad. All right. If you are staying for the spoiler section, please hang tight. If you are not, I will see you next Tuesday for chapters 11 through 20. So if you're still here, are you still here? This is the spoiler section. There's two that I want to talk about. One is from Keeping 13, which is the next book. So Johnny's irrational fear of getting arrested for Shannon being underage. Well, he doesn't get arrested, but this is an ongoing tension with Marie, her mother, Shannon's mother, throughout Keeping 13. So he says, holding my hands up in the air and away from her body because I needed a sexual harassment accusation, like I needed a hole in the head. Well, he does get sexual harassment accusations in Keeping 13. We're getting it from the get-go that, like, once again, his gut reaction is worth something because this does happen and he's got the foresight to be able to see it, and he has to think about these things the way that his friends don't have to because of his status and his celebrity. So the next spoiler is a spoiler from Taming Seven, which is Gibsie's book. So if you don't want to be spoiled about anything from that, then just skip ahead and I will be back with you in a second. In the stretch of chapters, Gibbs says, is talking about Shannon, he goes, yeah, the one that I took a molesting off D for so I could get her file. In Taming Seven, we get a lot more about his relationship with D, and I'm not going to lie, I really don't remember. But what is critical to Gibbs's story and his arc is that he has been sexually abused for many, many years in childhood. So we have to pay attention to his language and the relationship that he has to molestation, pedophilia, like things like that, because this is a critical part of his storyline. And that's it for our spoiler section. So let's get to our burn book, where we will look at the superlatives for this episode. The Bold and Bothered Award, strictly for the Femme and the Furious. It's for the quote or the moment that relays the feminine rage. And for me, it is when Shannon has like a flash of rage in her eyes that Johnny picks up on when she thinks that Johnny hit her on purpose. The Shiro Award. The award goes to the baddie who is the most inspiring or the moment that is the most empowering. And honestly, even though it's delayed, I really do think that it's Mrs. Lynch pulling Shannon out of BCS and putting her into Tommen. The Femme Fatale Award, you know, for the most smash the patriarchy moment of the episode. And this is when Johnny tries to cut in and speak, and Mrs. Lynch is like, my daughter can speak for herself. Speak your truth trophy. Best quote or line, and this is, I'm your daddy on the field, bitch. It's giving, welcome to the OC, bitch. This is how it's done in Orange County. I'm your daddy on the field, bitch. I love that line. Honorary heartthrob, because I'm just a girl, okay? And I want to talk about the most wound-worthy moments. And it is Gerard, Gibson, Gibsie on the field, looking at Claire and yelling across the field to her, go out with me. And her yelling back, get stuffed, Gerard. And he's like, yeah, I bet you'd like to. So he's flirting with her, but then he goes on to sing Brown Eyed Girl. And this is when he says to Johnny, I have a feeling I'm going to marry her. I love this. Go out with me. It's so perfect. I can't wait to see this in the TV show. All right, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Femme Furious. If you like this episode, share it with your Boys of Tommen stan friends, okay? Leave a comment. Please leave a comment anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Leave a review, subscribe, follow, all those good things. I will be back on Friday. I am doing XO Kitty Season 2 recap. Next Tuesday, I will be doing chapters 11 through 20 here on the feed for Boys of Tommen for Binding 13. If you have thoughts, feelings, opinions, whatever, send me an email, femmeandfuriouspod@gmail.com. Join the newsletter, Lipstick and Lore. If you want the visual companion, go over to the Patreon. It will be up tonight or tomorrow at some point. And until then, bye, Johnny.